Hi, my name is Annie Tan. I am an activist and organizer and a special education teacher. And I'm here to tell the story of how speaking out as an activist led me back to my own family and speaking out at home. So I grew up in a family where I didn't really understand much of what was happening because I grew up uh, in Chinatown as a kid of immigrants, and my parents didn't speak very much to me because they were working so much, and my job was to learn English and to help translate mail and go to doctor's appointments and translate. So I didn't really get a chance to speak much Cantonese, and so I just didn't learn it. My English is really good, and I wanted to learn more about my history. So when I was 13, I watched this PBS documentary called Becoming American: The Chinese Experience. Perfect for a Chinese American like me. And the last 30 minutes of it featured the history of this man named Vincent Chin. Vincent Chin was murdered in 1982 during the height of the Detroit auto worker crisis, and two white men beat him to death a week before his wedding day, um, thinking that he was Japanese and the cause of the decline of the auto industry here in America. And his death led to Lily Chin, his mother, going all over the nation speaking out for justice, to hundreds and thousands of protesters marching in the streets fighting for justice for Vincent. And for many Americans today, Chinese Americans, Korean Americans, Japanese Americans, people who look like me, to declare themselves Asian American. And it was from that point on that I wanted to be an activist. And it was that same moment that my mom came by the screen and she happened to see Vincent Chin's photo and said, Gogo Hele Buko, that is your older male cousin. It's like, what? So, like, that is the only mention my mother has ever given me, other than another time where she told my brother, don't go out to a bar late at night or else you'll get killed. My family was completely traumatized by the death of my cousin, Vincent Chin, and they didn't want me to speak up. But it's me, so I go and speak up, and I want to change the world. I'm going to be a teacher. And in 2011, when I graduated, unfortunately, there was a hiring freeze in New York City, so I moved to Chicago to be a teacher. And it was there that I felt like I found my people. I saw how terrible the conditions were for my special education students, so I joined the Chicago Teachers Union and the Special Ed Committee, and I started fighting against budget cuts. And I discovered I had family in the Midwest who knew English, so I could ask my Chicago auntie about the story of when my mom moved to America for the first time, went to Chicago to visit, and then brought my dad back from China. And that's how we came here. And there were all these cool things that I couldn't do in Chinatown. I'd be in like a summertime like rally on a bullhorn and in the Chicago Sun-Times newspaper, and then maybe the next week that summer fly home to New York over break and talk to my dad about nothing but food because I didn't know how to say the word union or protest in Cantonese. And while my dad called me every day while I was in Chicago, we talked for like 30 seconds about nothing. And I felt so much more at home in Chicago than I ever did in New York's Chinatown. And then 2016 comes and I hear about 10,000 people who look like me protesting in New York City at Prospect Park. And I was like, wow, like Asian Americans, Chinese Americans are protesting again? What for? And I discovered they were protesting for a Chinese American cop named Peter Liang. Peter Liang had just been found guilty of the manslaughter of Akai Gurley, a black man who was accidentally shot in his stairwell right after getting braids by his girlfriend and where he lived with his 2-year-old daughter. And I was like, wait, that's not right. The Chicago Teachers Union had taught me to stand up for my black students, for Black Lives Matter, for black teachers, for housing, for justice. And to have these Chinese Americans supporting the cop that killed this black man, I thought that was wrong, you know. And I was gonna leave it at that till the next day when I saw a newspaper article where a journalist wrote that other Asian Americans haven't had justice, like Peter Liang, you know, who was the first cop to be indicted for an on-duty shooting in 10 years. But he didn't have justice because he was Asian American, just like Vincent Chin didn't have justice. I was like, what? Are you seriously going to compare a cop who killed someone to Vincent Chin, who, just like Akai Gurley, is dead and whose families are mourning the loss of a son, a cousin? No. I was furious. I spent a whole day writing an article, and it was entitled on medium.com, Peter Liang was justly convicted. He is not a victim, by this cousin of Vincent Chin. And I wrote it in English, not thinking anyone in my family would read it. And then I also didn't expect it to go viral. Tens of thousands of people read it in the first go. It went on the front page of the Huffington Post, and then it was in multiple media outlets. And then finally, I found out the next day, it was translated in the Chinese newspaper. And then my family called and called and called. I got like 8 missed phone calls at one point. And I answered, my dad's like, take this article down now. And I was like, no. It's like, your family's very mad at you. It's like, no, like, even if I wanted to, I'm not going to. Black Lives Matter. And then I hung up. And I was like, oh my goodness, my family is just as bad. Like, maybe they're part of this, you know? And I was just furious, and like, I was silencing my phone because I wasn't having it with them. And then my Chicago auntie who spoke English called, and I was about to yell at her too. She's like, Annie, I just want to tell you why our family's mad right now. And she calmly walked me through a bunch of reasons, and some relating to the case itself. And I said, Auntie, you know, like, Peter Liang killed a man, you know, and I know he didn't mean to, but his gun was the one, like, he pulled the trigger, and that's why he was found guilty. And after explaining it, my aunt agreed, and she said she would tell the relatives. And then she told me, but Annie, like, you bringing up Vincent again really hurt. Like, you didn't even know Vincent. Like, you weren't even alive then, but we knew Vincent. For you to, like, say his name like that, that just really hurt. But also that you brought his name along with Black Lives Matter, and we, you know, we didn't want to be part of this political talk. And you just brought that in, and you made it seem like the whole family agreed with you, and that's just not true. And she was right. You know, I didn't mean to hurt my family like that. And anyone who's, like, mourning the loss of a son doesn't want their family to only be known by their death. They want their life to be remembered too. But also that I didn't talk to them about Black Lives Matter. How could I just put an article out there without having these tough conversations? Even though he is mine, he is my relative, like, they're theirs too, and I had to understand that. And I also realized that because I didn't talk to them, it was because I was scared of what they thought, but also, like, thinking I was, like, going to be really ashamed of my family. And I'd given up on them. I'd given up on any chance to really communicate with my family. So I had to move back to New York. I had to have a relationship with my parents, a relationship with my Chinatown and my culture, to understand why 10,000 people would march for this Chinese American cop, like, to talk about Black Lives Matter. And so I moved back that same year, 2016. And it was easy to fall right back into the dutiful daughter role of, like, translating mail and going to doctor's appointments. But, you know, I started asking questions. I started taking Cantonese classes and asking my parents to help me out with the grammar, vocabulary. And we talk about housing issues because I was starting to volunteer to help Chinatown tenants here. And they'd see me coloring in protest signs in English and then in Chinese because I was starting to learn it, and I'd ask them how to say it so I could chant it at the protests. I helped them become citizens. And I asked them when I was filling out their voting registration, what party are you going to register for? And I was scared of the answer, but my dad said that he was a blue collar worker all his life and he was going to vote Democrat and against this orange, crazy colored president, which is literally the translation in Cantonese, by the way. And now I have this much fuller relationship with them that only came because I started believing in them. I realized that no one is disposable, and you can not change the world if you give up on it. And I don't expect to change my parents. That's not my responsibility. But my responsibility was to change myself and to stop the toxic and enabling dynamics I was allowing myself to be in by closing myself off from them, by pushing them away instead of trying to connect with them. And so I encourage everyone here, there are some people who have had to close themselves off from their families because of really harmful, toxic behavior and setting boundaries. And that is also an option for not enabling these dynamics. But I would encourage everyone to think about what they've given up on, the things that are ugly and shameful about themselves that they believe about the world, and try to see a different thing. Try to make clear that no one and nothing is disposable, including our world. And it's with that mindset that you can actually change the hearts and minds of people and then actually change the world. And I am so grateful to be so much of a better activist, organizer, and person today because of that. Thank you so much.